So this is a question I'd like you guys to write down. Grab a piece of paper and a pen. I'm not sure where my slides are here. There we go. So I'd like you to ask yourself this question. Does your business align with your identity? So I'd like you to actually write that down. You can answer it later. You don't need to necessarily answer it now. But just simply write down, does my business align with my identity? Now, what do I mean by that? Who are you? What is your identity? I'm going to tell you about myself, and I'll tell you about how I found myself. So one of the things that I focused on recently, about a year and a half ago, can you guys hear me okay if I stand like this? It's a little easier. So one of the things I found about a year and a half ago when I was in entrepreneurship was that I needed to have a business coach. We were very driven, we were very ambitious, we were eager, but we didn't have the direction that we needed. So I hired a business coach. Business coach really helped me analyze my business, analyze the things I need to change, kind of allowed me to see the roadmap as to where I wanted to be, and then plan to succeed. Recently, I've started to focus on personal growth. So I've actually hired a life and business coach combined, straight out of LA. He's actually one of the top coaches in the world. He's traveling right now doing a tour. And he explained to me the importance of aligning my business with my identity. So too often we get stuck in jobs. I did this for years. I was in jobs that I was in out of necessity. So I was looking for money because I needed to survive. So my goal was basically to continue to grow, earning more money, thinking that would make me happy. What was happening is that my business wasn't aligning with who I was as a person. I wasn't a money-hungry individual, so my identity and my business were not aligning. I got into yoga. Shout-outs to Moksha Yoga here in Orleans. Lindsay actually introduced me to this about almost 2 years ago now. I had meditated prior to that, which allowed me to really connect with myself, but yoga brought it to a different level where I was actually able to connect with myself on a regular basis and really almost hit a reset button every time I finished a class, which was quite empowering. The importance of, why I'm explaining this to you is the importance of, we talk about community. Inside ourselves, we are a community. We're a community of cells. We're a community of thoughts. Every single thought that we have is a community of thoughts. And the importance of this community reflects onto the community that we're a part of physically in the world. So I just want to explain right now the importance of understanding your own identity to make sure that it now aligns with your business. So people ask me, what do you do, Paul? You know, they see me out, I'm doing things, I go to a lot of events, and what do you do? It's a question that we're all asked very often. First and foremost, I'm a father. I say that to everyone. You go to any of my social media pages, anything that I talk about, I always talk about being a father first, because I feel like that is my true calling in life. This is a photo actually taken of myself, Lindsay, and our 3 kids this past, well, actually, it was this month. We just got back from out east. Nice family trip. And this is us in the ocean here. So as far as a father, I have a bit of a different parental path than most people. I started young. You can see my daughter doesn't look very young in this photo. She's actually turning 16 this year. And I had her when I was 16. So it's kind of coming full circle, which is a very interesting dynamic to now watch my daughter turn into a beautiful young lady, and reflecting on what I was thinking at her age, a little different path that we're on, you could say. She's a globetrotter. She's been to Switzerland, she's been to Italy, she's been out west to BC, Cuba, Mexico. She's been all over the globe, and that's her aspiration. She's very passionate about traveling. Had her when I was 16. Her mother and I separated when I was 17, so it wasn't a long relationship. My eldest son, I'm going to briefly talk about fatherhood, then I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship. So fatherhood, my eldest son, Jackson, he's now 9. He's turning 10 next week. Avid athlete, soccer player, loves hockey. He literally could do anything athletic, and I feel like he would be successful at that. He's very passionate about it. Me and his mom met when I was 22. We had him very early on in our relationship. Literally about a month in, she was pregnant. So this was quite a challenge, as you can imagine. Having 2 children with 2 different mothers is not an easy task. There's a lot of quote-unquote baby mama drama that comes along with that. My youngest son, Madden, is 5. It's now 5, again with a 3rd mother. So this story is compounding, as you can see. Comes with its own challenges, but again, this was shifting me away from understanding my own identity. So my community of thoughts and my community of cells was away from where I needed to be. They weren't aligned. As far as entrepreneurship, what I found is that I was in business. I started working when I was quite young. My daughter having her at a young age forced me into the workplace a little faster than I would have anticipated. I always wanted to be a police officer growing up, had visions of being on the tactical unit, being a sniper, you know, the underwater diving team, something like that. Went to school went to Algonquin actually for about a year and a half, and then had a career opportunity at Bell that I couldn't pass up at the time. It's a salaried position, full-time, permanent, and it was something that I thought would allow me to give back to my daughter. So it forced me into the workplace. Worked at Bell for about 3.5 years, right on Elgin, 310 Bell, answering phones. Was great for customer service, great for sales, not so great for my personal development. So from there, I decided that it would be a more advantageous opportunity to manage a cell phone store. So I'll give you my thinking behind this. I noticed when I was at Bell that there was a landscape. People were changing from home phones to cellular phones, which now looking back is a pretty clear shift in the market. But at the time, people thought it was a little crazy. They're thinking, who's ever going to get rid of home phones? Bell had been one of the largest companies in Canada for 10, 20 years at that time. And it was a little surprising, I guess, to some that I thought that there was going to be this big landscape shift. Anyways, I switched over. I managed a Wireless Wave store in Carlingwood Mall. So Wireless Wave is a store that has the blue car in front of it. I'm sure you guys have seen it. So I managed that store in Carlingwood for a year. And actually, my current business partner and one of my employees were employees of mine at Wireless Wave. So you talk about building communities. These are people that worked with me there and have followed me since, which is really nice to see. It means a lot to me. With that said, Wireless Wave, I was there for a year, great management experience. Left Wireless Wave for an opportunity that really shifted my career path. So a friend of mine at the time was working at TD Waterhouse as an investment representative, a stock trader. And he knew that I always had a passion for numbers. I always loved numbers. My family is all number oriented, always crushed math in school. My father was a director of finance for a large Crown Corporation here in Ottawa. My sister's a CA. Everyone in my family is in accounting or finance in some way. So he said, you know what? He's like, I think this would be an amazing job for you. You're great in customer service. You have sales experience. You know how to talk to people, and you love numbers. So he explained to me some of the licenses, some of the processes that you need to go through to get an opportunity there. And I decided that this was a career that I really wanted to pursue. So I actually went out, registered for all the courses, started studying for them in advance of an interview, went into the interview, showed them how eager and proactive I was in pursuing this career, and they were instantly captivated. So they actually offered me the position, which was for me a game changer, as you can imagine. Having dropped out of college, having little to no work experience in finance at all, other than working the cash register at a retail store. And really choosing to pursue this career. This was something that to me at the time I would have never pictured happen. So worked at TD Waterhouse for a year, was on the phones again, taking calls, taking trades. And I decided that I wanted to move away from that. I wanted to be more in front of the client. I wanted to actually build a relationship with them and help them achieve their financial goals. So I decided to transition from TD Waterhouse over to TD Canada Trust. So I worked in the retail branch. I actually opened the branch in Carleton Place, which is where my eldest son lives, with his mother and stepfather. And I opened the branch out there. So there's a branch actually right off Highway 7. You guys have probably seen it, TD Canada Trust. So I opened that branch as one of the senior advisors. Was there for a year, again, with his mother at the time. And then transitioned back to Ottawa. So I worked at the Orleans branch here, Orleans and Saint Joseph, for 4 years. And from there, throughout my career, TD is very specific on wanting to grow their employees. So they really want you to proceed. If anyone has ever, dealt with TD, you will know that if you go back 2 years after dealing with someone, the likelihood is they're probably moved on to a different branch, right? This is a common theme. So what I did is I decided that I wanted to get into management. I knew that I had done management in the past. I knew that I was fairly good at coaching people and explaining to them, sharing my experience and learning from the things that they were having challenges with. So I decided to make that clear that I wanted to get into management. I told them for about 3 years straight that I wanted to do that. Opportunities kept coming up. I kept getting passed, overlooked. So it got to the point where I said, okay, well, I'm going to take this into my own hands. So at one point, I transitioned to a smaller branch. I was a senior advisor there, opening and closing, doing a few more managerial tasks. But it still wasn't fulfilling the need that I wanted. I really wanted to be able to give back to the people that were in the branch. And there was a few holes that I saw in their scope, I guess, that I wanted to try to help fill. So what I did is I decided to walk away from my career at TD, and after dropping out of college and having a salaried, pensionable, benefit-filled job, it was quite a jump for me, quite a leap. But I decided that by working at TD, I was limited in being able to build the life that I wanted, build the communities that I wanted to be a part of. When you're in an environment such as that, and a lot of people are still in that environment, I feel that the world needs more entrepreneurs. So when I look at you guys, this is a very welcoming environment, a great community. Obviously the chamber itself is a great hub for business. But I felt when I was at TD that I was restricted in being able to be a part and speak openly about the communities that I wanted to be a part of. So by leaving TD, not only did it allow me to have a better work-life balance with my children and my family, but it also allowed me to build communities that I wanted to be a part of instead of just being forced into ones. So I'm going to talk to you quickly about what I call the ABCs of growth. And actually, as I was driving here, I was telling Lindsay, I said, I'm going to switch the C because I feel like it's too cliche. So I wrote down here the ABCs. Analyze, and this is for any problem that I encounter now in my life. Analyze, brainstorm, and change. And change is always the hardest one. So I've learned through my business coach as well that the word shouldn't be change, it should be choice. And when I talk about community of thoughts, you know, we choose what our thoughts are. We don't think we do, but we do. And I found myself, and I think a lot of men suffer with this, I found myself, my self-talk was very negative. I was constantly putting myself down. I would forget a pair of shorts. I'd go to a yoga class, let's say, and I'd forget a pair of shorts, and I'd be telling myself, you're so stupid, you're an idiot. How could you forget that? And this is only internal, but it's still this is the self-talk that I was having. It was negative. And this was reflecting on other aspects of my life that I didn't even realize at the time. So what I did is I decided to, when I was at TD, analyze what the situation was. I tried to picture the perfect life that I wanted to live. I brainstormed how I could bring that into existence, and then I chose to make that change. So you look at me today, I'm about 195 pounds. At the time when I was working at TD, I was over 250 pounds. I was unhealthy. I remember looking in the mirror and thinking to myself, you know, you're fat, you're useless. I was making all these excuses for why I couldn't have the life that I wanted to have. So I decided to change, which is really the hardest thing that we can do. We are constantly changing every single second of every day, but you can make the choice to change the way that you want to change, and that's what I started to do. So recently I spoke at Mo Mondays. I know there's a few. Andrew Scott actually spoke this past week, and I know John Gordon is actually speaking in November. It's a great platform for people to get up. Anyone has the opportunity to do it, I would highly encourage it. Basically, it's a group. It's across Canada. It's an amazing community. 6 speakers per month go up and tell their story. So I actually, for the first time, went up and told a bit of a micro version of this story, but just talked about my battle with depression and suicide and so on, and basically turning that around and making the conscious effort, the aha moment that Stella alluded to, where I basically looked myself in the mirror, similar to how you guys looked in each other's eyes today. I looked at myself, and that was the first time that I truly connected with myself and had a self-talk. It was almost an out-of-body experience. I've tried to explain it, but it's very difficult to put into words. But I remember the feeling of looking in the mirror and just connecting with myself for the first time. And it was almost a voice telling me, what are you making, like what do you actually want? What are you looking to achieve in your life? So I was asking myself direct questions that I had to answer. And then what happened is I pretty much told myself off. I said, you know, F your excuses, F your weight, F your job, F everything. And I chose to make the change. So from that point forward, I started eating better. I started exercising. I started focusing more on my relationships that I had. And it changed my life for the better. I met Lindsay over that time frame. As I said, I've lost about 60 pounds. I left my job at the bank. I now have my own company. It's been operating for over 3 years that I'm very happy with. We just moved offices. It's an office that I created and I'm very happy about. John actually laid the floor. Shout outs to John Gordon. So the next thing I want to quickly talk about is expectations versus requirements. And this is something that was really impactful for me and things that I've allowed me to change continuously over the last few months. So an expectation is a belief that someone should or will achieve something. I'm going to need you guys to get your pens and paper here quickly because I'm going to have you write something down. Expectations are lived up to, and expectations are subjective. So, for example, the Olympics are happening right now, it's Summer Olympics, but we expect in the Winter Olympics for Canada to win the gold medal. That's an expectation. If they don't win, we're kind of disappointed, right? So, expectations are lived up to. If they win the gold medal, we're all like, well, yeah, that's kind of what we expected to happen. It's not surprising, right? Because we expect it. So they're lived up to. Requirements are black and white. Requirements are met as opposed to lived up to. And requirements are objective. So one of the main realizations I had, what I've done is I actually wrote down 3 categories in my life. Relationships, so that can be personal, that can be business, that can be romantic relationships. I wrote down business, and then I wrote down myself. And what I did is I actually wrote 3 requirements for each of those. So I wrote this down here. This is actually Javon Langford, who is my business coach, wrote, when your requirements are black and white, the world becomes colorful. And when your requirements are colorful, the world is black and white. And what he's trying to say what he means by saying that is that when you have your own set of rules that you will not break, the world around you becomes quite colorful. But if you have no rules and you're just going with the flow, the world is black and white. It just throws at you exactly what it wants and it's controlling you. So what I'd like you guys to do is choose one of those categories, either relationships, business, or self. Okay, so just write down one of those 3 things. And I'd like you to write 3 requirements for that category. So I'm going to give you an example. For myself, for business, I wrote down it has to be something that I'm passionate about, has to have a personal growth component to it, and I want to be surrounded by inspiration. So I feel like myself, we are all beacons of energy, right? And when I'm around negative people, I get negative. That's just how I am. When I'm around positive, passionate, enthusiastic people that are inspiring, I also get inspired. And I need to be in that sort of environment. So that is a requirement for me. That is something that I absolutely need. So I'll give you guys maybe 30 seconds. Think about it quickly. I'll give you a minute, actually. Think about a requirement in one of those 3 categories. Relationships, business, or self. Okay? Everyone understand that?
But before we go into that, I wanted you to make sure that you understand that the blockchain is a layer on top of the internet. In the same way that the World Wide Web is a layer on top of the internet, and we've had it in the last 22 years, blockchain and blockchain applications are a new layer that can sit at par with the World Wide Web. So you can imagine we can have different flavors of blockchain applications. And some of them could be native to the blockchain and do not use the web necessarily. And some of them are a hybrid of a blockchain app combined with a web application. And since we live in a world of public and private domains, there will be representations of these applications in the public domain, and there will be representations of those applications in the private domain. And we have 4 flavors of blockchain applications, which is how I describe it, and it's covered in the book. In terms of going forward with decentralization, which is really the topic I'm interested in discussing with you, the 3 pillars are around trust itself, that is changing, wealth creation, and information. So let's dive into each one of them and see what is changing in each one of them. In the trust aspect, think of law, governance, and industry specifically. So we have to change the laws regarding the decentralization of trust. And the laws have to change, for example, if you're in the banking sector, the record-keeping rules do not take the blockchain into consideration right now. Record-keeping has to go into a database that has to adhere to some standards. But we should change the laws so that the blockchain is allowed and is accepted as a record-keeping, for example. Governance models. There were lots of sessions at this conference about the governance models. I think there's lots of innovation in the governance models, and including governing organizations, like distributed autonomous organizations, or in terms of government itself. And then finally, every industry is going to have to innovate within itself. The banking industry is the one that kind of seems to have a lot of activity, but there is activity in the banking services, but I don't see a lot of innovation there applying technology. I think we will see more innovation in healthcare, in energy, and in government services. The second sector, which is wealth creation, and here I'm talking about a real economic production, There's going to be a new crypto economy that is going to be born by just creating new services and new wealth straight on the blockchain itself, where work that is performed on the blockchain translates into value that is recycled into transactions. And I'll give you an example. There is an application called Lazuz, which is a ride-sharing application. It is not commercially available yet. They're still working on it. But the idea is that when you download the application and as you drive, it is collecting data about your driving patterns. And this data will earn you points, tokens, cryptocurrency, fraction of a cryptocurrency, which you can use to take a ride the next day, for example. So here, the example is that we've created a new microeconomy out of just work. And in this case, the work was driving. So we have so much data as people, as users. We have so much data about ourselves. Why can we not sell a part of that data and earn something in return? And then recycle that value back into a transaction. So there aren't too many examples, and I'd like to see more examples where there is work that is being generated, results into a transaction, and stays within the system in a cryptocurrency model. There's a new flow of value, which I just talked about. So when you think about it, money is value, yes, but value is not just money. Any asset now is value. Any asset can go on the blockchain and can be transparently transported at the speeds of the blockchain. And then the third aspect was the okay, sorry, slides. Oh, too fast. There's a delay. Sorry about that. Okay, and the transactions. We're going to have to see transactions specifically on the blockchain, and one way to do that is to measure them. And we're still in the very early stages of that. And the third topic is information. For example, content decentralization, content publishing that is decentralized. You can name any application that is a web application today, and there is an equivalent decentralized application that somebody is working on the blockchain, whether it's content publishing or content distribution specifically. So that's an important aspect. The second one, privacy. Privacy is going to be very important. And there's a difference between anonymity and privacy. I think there is a need for anonymity for the right reason. It doesn't mean that you will hide from the legal authorities or that you will be a bad person. But the blockchain promises that we will have our own identities on the blockchain. If you think about it today, who owns our identities online? Mostly it's Google or Facebook, because this is how you log into all these online properties. But in the future, we should be able to own our own identities on the blockchain. And the identity on the blockchain is the starting point for a lot of innovation in terms of the applications that are out there. And finally, security. Security becomes a design requirement from day one. It is not an afterthought. It is something that is built into the decentralized applications where everything between the application and the user is encrypted. Everything from the data to the application to the processing. And then you can share certain pieces of your data with certain entities that are authorized to see the information. Could be an example could be healthcare, where you might just provide specific healthcare providers with your data, or maybe aggregate your data if there is a specific disease that you have or a specific case and you want to see how you compare with others. So the blockchain holds that promise. There's going to be a lot of innovation coming out of decentralization that we want to see in the peer-to-peer models and protocols. For example, e-commerce. There's a company called OpenBazaar. I'm an investor. I'm on a board member as well. But OpenBazaar, as an example, is a vertical protocol for decentralized peer-to-peer commerce. And it sits on the horizontal protocol of the Bitcoin blockchain. And I'd like to see more of these protocols. Maybe every industry will have a protocol for a specific function that it does. And then once you have that, in this case, then you can conduct e-commerce without eBay. You can do business on a peer-to-peer basis without having anybody in the middle. So think about all the savings in transaction fees or in listing fees. And this is one of the examples that we're going to see a lot more of. There will be some trust-based systems and services. Think of it as a dial tone for trust. I've written a recent article for TechCrunch, which was an excerpt of the book, and it said the blockchain could be the next Google. What I meant by that is that the blockchain could enable the next Google. If you think about it today, when you want to look for information, you search on Google for services or for products. But in the future, we will be looking not just for information, we will be looking for truth. We will be looking for transparency. We will be looking for titles and ownerships. And all of these services that are the proofs of something that is on the blockchain. Where are we going to go? There will be an equivalent of a Google-like, but maybe the name will not be Google, it will be another company that will start to provide these services where you can go and check if somebody owns something, if somebody is telling the truth about something. You can check the history of transactions. You can check the history of the provenance of products. You can check if there was any fraud committed. Or you can check all kinds of services where there's a proof. Where in the past you had to go somewhere and stand behind a counter or talk to somebody. And we're going to be able to do all of that on blockchains once we bind our identities to the usage. There's lots of talk at this conference about autonomous organizations, distributed or decentralized autonomous organizations. I'm a little bit cautious here. I believe in the model, but I think we have to be cautious because we have to learn about the behavior of these decentralized organizations before we can put them on the freeway. It is the same thing as having decentralized, as having autonomous cars. There's been a lot of testing right now to have autonomous cars, where we start by allowing the car to park itself or to just be hailed from a few meters away. And then it's all testing before we can take these autonomous cars on the highway. And I think the same thing applies for all the models around the decentralized autonomous organizations. And I would caution here about not wanting to run too quickly and assuming that we can have decentralized autonomous organizations from the get-go. It takes some practice. It takes some tests. I'd like us to see how we can test these DAOs with small dollar values, not with millions of dollars, where the losses could have some severe repercussions on the whole system. And then finally, we're going to see a lot of these new wealth creation methods and distribution methods, like the case of Lazuz. I would like to see more wealth being created within the system, within small micro crypto economies, where work translates into a currency that can be spent on a transaction for a specific service, whether it's a driving service or whether it could be a banking service, it could be a storage service, file storage, for example, where if you loan some of your file system, then you will earn some tokens. And there are applications and solutions that are doing this right now. So that is what we should be looking for in terms of decentralization going forward. And we're still at the very beginning of the decentralization stage, and I think the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Hope you all enjoyed that and find the topics William discussed interesting. To get a little sense How many in the room actually use Bitcoin? Okay. How many are interested, or how many have heard of Bitcoin? Probably everyone? Yeah, okay. Are you more interested after this talk that Bitcoin and things like it, are going to push society in a good direction? Hands, show of hands. Yes. Good direction, bad direction. Does anybody have so there's some reservations about this. Okay, good, because I have a slightly critical, discerning eye towards blockchains. And so the nature of questions I have. Oh, also, does anybody have questions that they want to ask? So I can gauge my time. 2, 3, okay. So like, one of the big problems with blockchains in general right now is the technical scaling, whereby the size of a blockchain is a file. Imagine it as a very, very large file that lives on computers. And you, in the beginning of Bitcoin, anybody could run the full blockchain on their computer. But now the blockchain has grown to about, I think, 65 gigabytes for the Bitcoin one. And that's handling very specific types of transactions, which people are kind of using like money. But in a world like William's talking about, where government systems, all sorts of things start using blockchains, the scaling issue will become quite a big issue with the size of this file that allows for the distributed trust. So how do you see that getting solved in a way that's done in a distributed fashion itself, so that it's not controlled by, say, one big corporation or one big VC firm?
Sure. I mean, the issue of scalability is an issue that will be solved. Right. It is not an issue that is going to stay with us for a long time. I can tell you for a fact, all of the engineers and entrepreneurs that I know in the space are very focused on the scalability issue. So it's like, usually you don't solve an issue that you don't have yet. Even the internet has scalability issues. Did you know that? If 50 billion things, Internet of Things, were to be connected to the internet today, it would crash. And we have to continuously upgrade the internet protocol. And we do that as we see the problem. Now, I realize with the blockchain, we have some base level scalability issues we have to solve. And they will be solved on time. And then it will evolve from there. So I'm not worried about scalability being an issue for the long term. It is something that will be solved. Everybody's focused on it right now.
Right. I have faith that technically it will be solved as well, and that it's failing, but in a very graceful way right now, and the scaling will be solved. But I mean more so the social, financial dynamics that bring about how this changes, right? The Bitcoin community is being kind of ripped apart at the moment, or it was. It's getting better now. From some people who work on it, who have investment from venture capital firms to build certain extra technologies to solve the scaling problem that pull it in one direction, right? That increase, say, this one technical component of it. But then there's other people who disagree, and then they, and they also have financial interests that are bringing from where they're coming from. So yep. I guess the root of what I'm saying is like, how do you see balancing this sort of radical new tech that can change society and culture versus a layer that gets slapped on the existing venture capital corporate world? Or is it? I mean, it's either way.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of flavors of different types of implementations. The discussions you're referring to in the Bitcoin space specifically relate to what is called the block size debate, where there are many different ways to increase it, and that will increase the number of transactions or the speed of the network. Again, I mean, one could see the glass as half full or as half empty. And I can tell you, those that are serious and developing blockchain applications, whether it's on Bitcoin or other blockchains like Ethereum, are not very worried. Instead, they are developing the applications and they are pushing it forward. Like in the case of OpenBazaar, I'll use them as an example because they are one of the largest scale types of decentralized applications. And in the first months, they've had 110,000 downloads. And there are users using them, and it's working fine. You take the Ethereum side, there are more than 200 startups in the ecosystem, and many of them are getting funded now, and they are launching their services. So entrepreneurs love a challenge. Engineers love a challenge. You put 5 engineers in a room with a problem, they will solve it over time. And you give challenges to entrepreneurs, and they will solve them. and whether it's taking money from VCs or funding their startups in other ways. And I think this is all very exciting at this point.
Okay. So maybe also elaborate more on the difference of privacy and anonymity and how that plays out in the blockchain space, whereby so many startups in the current non-decentralized model exist because their business models depend on user data and mining user data and using this user data and selling this user data, which is both not favorable to privacy nor anonymity. And swinging this pendulum away from that, whereby a blockchain system is more respectful of privacy and maybe allows for anonymity.
Yeah, I think in the future, I can see a future where we can configure our own privacy settings ourselves and decide that for this particular service, maybe we just give them this kind of data. For this other service, we give them this other data. And that way, you always know who has what data from you. And anonymity is important because it has its own usages. For example, there are countries where if you say something that is very open, then your life might be at risk. So anonymity there is not to do something malicious or to do something illegal or to avoid paying taxes. Anonymity has a role in doing something good. And I think we should be able to, within the same kind of confine, within the same system, say, well, I want to be anonymous for here, but not anonymous there, and I'm okay to share my data with this service or not. But what's going to drive all of this is the applications, not just the identity element itself. If you think about it, it's like having a passport. What good is your passport if you don't travel? Because it sits in your drawer and you never use it unless you want to go to an airport and travel somewhere. And the airport and the travel are like the applications for the e-identity, and we need more of those kinds of applications.
We're running a little bit tight on time if you wanted to ask the
Okay.
audience for a few questions.
Good. Yeah, I'll come over to you. Oh, you got it. Okay.